Merci d'être là. Alors, avant de commencer, je voulais souligner que vous avez la chance d'avoir un binôme canadien.
We have a Canadian pair here allowing us to give you a good example of diversity of Canada. In spite of my accent, I live in Montreal. I've been living in Canada. You had the English version with Leo, and you now have the French-speaking version from Quebec. And I also want to tell you that in Canada, the stores sell more than black and pink. Apparently, with Leo, we have the same uniform, but we have keynote speakers who are not from Canada. So my name is Esther DORMAGEN, and I co-created a consulting firm in sustainable development in Montreal. I've been doing this for 15 years, so the day I got to Canada, and for 15 years we've been supporting all kinds of organizations in their transformation for strategies and more sustainable practices. And then a few years back, I realized that in the way we were operating, a consultant doesn't necessarily stay long in organizations. So we work with the teams, we support them, we apply strategies, but after that, the implementation is done by the clients themselves. And I realized that in our operations, in our missions, the true, not measurable, but visible impact we had was more into the spark we saw in the eyes of the people we were supporting, and then the competence of whom we developed. And this is, I said, this is where we have a true power of actions as consultants. It is in the transformation of individuals, in helping individuals in organizations understand what would be the power and clarify the strategies they could implement to get there. Once you understood that, we started exploring, reading a lot. Frédéric Laloux, of course, Reinventing Organization. We started meeting people who could help us understand how you can do this better and empower the teams to transform their own organizations themselves. So I met the people from Imfusio at the time. Nathalie at the time was living in Montreal, so it was interesting to share experience with her, and she was looking at me saying, finally, you have understood, you've been doing this forever, and you understood that it was you had influence on people and discovered the concept of shared governance, liberated companies, all these emerging concepts in France. And I realized gradually that there were theoretical aspects, others that were more engaging. And I also noticed that companies were different, integrated these concepts differently. And it seemed to me there were three ways of progressing on those topics. Some organizations need a framework that revolutionize the whole process internally. All the governance processes put a framework, training, really some principles, very structured principles. And these organizations need some new models to start with new models, start afresh. But we realized that an organization with 6 people realized that that wasn't suitable for us. If we were to do that, I would put a lot of Quebec expressions, realized that it was for us a bit like shoveling in the clouds. You know, you can imagine that's a typical Quebec expression, shoveling clouds. It will not work for us. But I've also visualized that with other organizations we had, people, they started with small gestures, small steps, learned from them, and put theory at the end. Say, oh, this is more like us. And I also found there was a third way to enter that, in a hybrid way. We're going to address an issue, and we're going to work as a collective intelligence in shared governance, whatever name it. And in these companies, that was more that was more like us. So we started, the issue I chose is compensation. We doubled our team, we went from 2.5 to 6 people since last week, so this is a big change. And I say, if we're not today capable of having open conversation, transparent conversation on how much we get and what is important, and I say, you shouldn't call that compensation or benefits compensation. So I talk to people from Imfusio and say, maybe this is contribution, aware contribution. That's the topic. This is what we have no choice but to be transparent on this. So this is what we're going to start with. I'm very happy to have our 3 panel members who are going to show us different perspectives. I'll take my notes so make sure I have the right names. We have here on my left Agnes, who is in charge of managing director of Délice, an SME into retail. What I haven't been saying for 15 years, based in Lille, in this very region. So this is an SME perspective, and we like that because these are concrete example that you can apply quite easily. We have to her left Philippe MÉCHET, who is the pilot of Parlons Énergie mission and collective intelligence. So I thought it would be very interesting to have in a very big structure someone who steers collective intelligence. So he's going to explain what he does in a company with several hundreds of thousands of employees. And to the left, we have Ségolène GUITTON, who is a utopist, realist, and also facilitator at Imfusio, who works all over France. And what is interesting with Imfusio, not only do they help their clients, so they are consultants, they help the consultants in cultural transformation, but also they've done it internally. So it is a lab, and Ségolène will talk about how they did that and what she sees in the organization she works with. So I'm going to start. I believe all the microphones are on. So Ségolène, I'd like for you to start. I think it's going to take over when I stop. So I'd like you to explain what you've done at Imfusio, and is it important to start with your own organization, what you see around you? So good afternoon. I'm very happy to be with you at the World Forum. Maybe I'd like to add something on what Imfusio does, even if Esther's already betrayed of what we do. We're quite cousins with what Esther does in Montreal. We support a company organization is a transformation, whether on topics such as innovation, managerial culture, talent programs and other business issues. What's interesting for us is the way we do it and what kind of resources so that companies can work without us and be empowered in this approach of transformation. The other interesting point is our conviction that we start first with the enthusiast people. So we don't want to convince 100% of the people of what we need to change. We are going to work with those who want to invest and work in an approach of change in the company, and we count on an effect that works each time is positive contagion. So we think positivism is contagious, and that was created by 3 people 15 years ago, and we like this transmission. With this sharing of skills with our customers. So we have to be consistent, and this is why we have a true R&D spirit in the Fusio, and especially we test quite a few things on us, on ourselves. So we are our own lab. We are in shared governance. This is something that has been in effect, it's been concrete for the past 3 years, even though we've never truly had the hierarchy. You had 2 layers, partners and the others. And today we no longer have layers. We all at the same level, all have at one point the possibility to make decisions and act as long as it serves the mission of Infusio's mission and why we get up every morning. So we've told that by recognition in conscience. So we talked about compensation benefits in conscience. We each determine our salary. This is a ritual we implemented 2.5 years ago. It's been, what, 3 years? Nearly 3 years. So every 4 months we meet, and every 4 months we exchange on the topic beyond compensation about recognition. And this is a time where we are led to decide of a pay increase or not move because we can feel where we are. Then realize that with colleagues we don't want more money, but maybe have a Monday off or have a company scooter. So these are all the things. There is a benefit of compensation, of course, but all the things that the company can provide us in terms of recognition, what they can offer. Well, we said in conscience because we just don't do it like this. We do it. Everything is transparent. It's always been like that at Physio, but everything is transparent, and everything is said every 4 months, so we can think about it. So we have the turnover, the available salary bill, the state of the cash flow, the compensation of each person, the evolution of compensation over the past few years. So all this is very transparent. So individually, we can choose what we want to feel right, to have free spirit, and in what we do on a daily basis. What else do we have? Unlimited holidays, which is more like holidays in consciousness. We don't count our holidays. We take holidays when we are tired, when you've just had a whole week to be away from the office, away and be tired, rather than saying I no longer have holidays, I've already used all my holidays. It's the possibility to say to rest and come back full of energy to come back and work. And the last, there are many little things I could share with you, but I want to give the floor to my neighbors. What is important to me to share, we had an opening of the capital to employees with a free distribution of shares. So we are all shareholders in a company. So this is the ultimate gesture to translate our shared governance. So 30% of the capital of Infusio was distributed for free to employees, and the criteria for distribution was decided by the employees without the partners being involved, because what was important is that we felt comfortable. So they didn't have to look into this, and they gave us this figure of 30%, which is a great gift to start with. So we now have, I believe, fully consistent with what we say, what we experience, and also it gives us more strength is what we tell our clients, even though we don't ask them to do exactly like what we do, but it depends clearly on where you come from and the history, the legacy of the company. It so happens that our company is made up of founders, was created by founders who wanted to push the limits of the traditional models. And just to complement, how many people? 15 people. And just tell us, what does it inspire with your clients? What does it change? Maybe you could tell us straight away. well, they would be the best place to talk about it. But I think what it changes is that when you share with them and you're pushing them in their own situations, I mean, it's easy to say, I mean, how do you do it? And when we tell them what we do, they say, oh, we're going to start small, that'd be great. Okay, fine. And then we trust you because there's a true embodiment of wanting to change things with a true respect for employees. There is something in what we share that translates the fact that we no longer consider employees as children, and we are adults in a company managed by adults. So potentially, we have a capacity, we have a voice, we have opinions, and therefore, to have this mirror, that creates, makes our support more credible. Philippe, could you tell us your larger company experience? What did you do concretely? Well, it is slightly different because with the 165,000 within EDIS and 100,000 EDF, we didn't ask them to set the compensation. Maybe we should have. But it started from what? Well, collective intelligence is quite recent. It is 2 years old. It started from a double observation. First, there was a lack of confidence in the strategy. We have a recurring survey like large companies do. And we felt there was a downward slope of engagement and confidence of minus 20 points in 3 years. So it was due to the fact that the energy debate was really at the core of the news in between 2014 and 2017. The operation started in 2017, so we said we have to think about the vision of the company and go deeper. Our objective was to submit this vision to our employees through workshops of about 10 people each time, and we gathered 10,000 plus 10,000 platforms, so 20,000 altogether in 27 sites, sites with 3 days, and then we had them work on a number of aspects of how do you formalize our vision of the innovation and how to change the energy mix, going from 75 to 50% nuclear power. It's not only a change, it's just not just a comment. We asked the company to change the activity model, so there was a necessary engagement of the employees. It has to be completely transparent. We did that over 6 months. The way we did it, we have 3 months of exchange on all the what we did. Everything was animated by dialogue. Dialogue people, as we said, is a pair of employees. So we trained our own. It is fully internal. We used all the internal forces to do that. So they noted everything, and every night we were part of a session. It was put onto the platform so that each of the people who worked could see what had been done, whether it was properly reported or what was missing. So it lasted over 3 months. We had a tour, and then we worked for 2 months with my team to work on the synthesis. Everything was transparent, because what's important is transparency in this, is to see that we're going to take into account. My purpose was to see what we're going to do after that. So we had 20 new programs, significant ones. I'm talking about agile organization, how to change the organization. Some employees worked in sort of startup mode. Each time it was on a voluntary basis, only volunteers. So at all levels, to try and see what we could do. If I say agile organization, they didn't want any managers anymore. They wanted coaches. So we don't want people to who report to, but rather people who encourage us, who support us, and lead us to dare more, intervene in processes. So we worked on that, and it gave rise, 6 months later, in June, to an executive board of the group, where the 14 members gathered for 3.5 hours live, so broadcast through the whole company to debate on a number of proposals and programs. I always committed to the employees in the introduction of the session saying, you say whatever you want to say, no taboo, no holds barred. So make all proposals, but some of them will not be kept, and we'll explain to you why we don't keep that. So it's transparency, but also going forward. And then the process went very well. These that we continue working on, because agile organization, we have ambassador, we've got what we can do from a solo point of view, loads of programs on territories, whatever we can provide. On each of these programs, you have measures taken, each time they're adopted by the executive board, that give rise to transformation of the company. So we use collective intelligence to transform the company. De facto, we've reorganized open sessions that took place this time earlier this year, on which we are, of course, currently working. That were 3 workshops to each of the employees took part in the sessions the same way. It was where do we want to go? Then how do we want to get there? And the third aspect, which is very important, is something that is in the law, in the pact law, that allows companies to give their core purpose, the raison d'être. Because your raison d'être, you cannot deviate from it. I give you an example. When Danone says the question of health, so it has to get rid of all the activities that can be harmful to health, like alcohol and so on. So we work on the raison d'être, the core purpose. Why do we get up in the morning? Why do you get to work? And it created on the company a true engagement. The idea is that the employees are more engaged, more committed, that their opinion is taken into account in 2 measures, and it gets to what we call concrete challenges that will impact the organization, the operation of the company, change the way things work. Because I said there are many people in the company, but it's complicated. A big structure that is a bit like a big boat with a lot of hierarchy. It's not at all a company, and this is a message of small units. It's great, you can do many things, but the big units is more difficult. And what is complicated is not the top management, but the middle management, because you have to understand them. It's their capacity to we said that this authority is going to be disturbed by the contribution of the addition of employees. And I won't even give you the result, because it's we had 98% of satisfied people who are involved, who want to participate in the platform. And each challenge, as we said, for each challenge, they can actually say, oh, this is where we stand. So that was a quick summary, but just to tell you that this is a company who tried to get moving, and since it was a major structure, SNCF asked me to work with them, and Guillaume Pépi also worked to try and talk to SNCF, and AXA is also on this. We saw Air France, to see how we can organize at the scale of heavy, old, legacy type of companies with a lot of hierarchy, how we can transform the company through the employees. And they are rather convinced to go at it, because the results are very positive. There is, at first, there was a risk-taking. There's no risk. This is where you realize that employees want to take part, want to participate. They can criticize, but they have to be constructive and lead to something positive. And I'm convinced that collective intelligence in small, medium-sized, or large structures is something that is going to be generalized, because it helps with the operation of a company. We work in confidence, in transparency, and it is positive for everyone, for employees, for the top management as well. So, in a few words, this is what I meant to say, but of course I'll answer your questions. It's positive for the business, for your transition had impact. It has impact on well, of course, one of our challenges with opening to territories and the request of employees to, let's talk about energy, external, let's talk about energy. We did that close to a dam. It's a small territory where we invited the associations and the stakeholders of the territory. So we had 101 positive answers and 110 people came. So we have them work on how do we do that, how do we develop ecotourism, and it's connected to the use of water. So there had several workshops, and again, with the teams of the municipalities and so on, the measures that we can take. So we can also open up to society and oblige us who, well, we're the company that we are sort of looking at ourselves. People at EDF, they think that everyone every night thinks of EDF, so we sort of live in a closed way like this. So the idea is that it should open employees to society. So it's very important, as you say, on the interaction you have between a company and society. This company works for society, so it's only normal that we have this exchange. Thank you very much, Philippe. Agnes, do you compare your experience as a concrete company which is also directly distributing to end users another perspective? So it took a different turn. Tell us about it.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story of a path towards transformation in an SME. An SME has to change because it's a company. Well, I'm very much as a professional from the Nord, family company in the Nord. It's an SME which was born in that culture, so we are now on the path of transformation. Délice. Délice is what? 26 shops in France selling kitchen utensils and ingredients. So when I came 3 years ago, the company had lost money for 7 years. It had been sold by one of the franchisees leaving Belgium, and the business model was not at all profitable. It is still not totally profitable. So at the same time, I found employees who were very fond of their company, passionate with their job, and relatively conscientious, because when you spend energy for a few years and you can't have good results, that is to say the right sales, volume of sales, of course you get exhausted. And what I found extraordinary in that company was that whatever the job of the people, they were all passionate with the job, the field of Délice, that's culinary, and all these things have been done by our employees. I could have posters of all that throughout the theater, and you have people who are crazy about food and cooking. So I wondered how I could use this engine and this energy, bringing together the employees around home cooking, and how can I reach excellence, service to customer, exigence. And I like talking about the aesthetics in services, in products, in relationship, because we really want to do something beautiful. I like everything that is beautiful, and so I found that it was a very good ground. So we went into the DNA of the company, and we felt that our convictions were very strong. We are not the owners of those convictions. A lot of people talk about, enterprises talk about ecosystems, and when you talk about ecosystems, you get to the center of the ecosystem, and you wonder, who shall I work with? We felt different. We have a strong vision. When you cook at home, you provide a good feeling. You are only the servers, and we are different people to serve this cause. And this also invites people to excellency and to change. So this was really an engine in our transformation, and it has made it possible for us to define our raison d'être, which is do everything we can to make home food accessible to all. It's not a question of budget, because some people haven't had the right education to make homemade cooking, and sometimes you don't have the budget for home food. So it made it possible for all of us to be brought together around a cause. It made it possible for each of us to act, to do something, to feel free, and to determine what to do for common good. So, on that basis, we went further, and now, since 2015, we felt that we were a company with a mission which is an environmental raison d'être. It takes time. That is why we are on the right track. But it's also a community of men and women who undertake together towards a good future. And that's what I like in the definition, because it's very close to the theme of the conference. And when you are in the unknown, you are all on a same level, and everybody's talent is useful. So I think it's a huge invitation. It's a very good ground to grow, to provide power to the employees. So we have drafted a founding act. We brought together the majority of our employees. We brought together more than one-half of our employees to launch this company with a mission. And after that, they have all elected a so-called mission committee. They are all in the room here. We have had an election without a candidate, so the whole community has elected representatives, 2 people per shop, 2 people from the office, and 3 members of the management committee. And I'm also there to help them, first of all, bring them my support, and also teach them how to make decisions beyond their job. Say, you can do things, and I have to learn with them. So it's really something which is common. And communication is very important indeed for all the employees. And we have put that on a sketch. What do we do with the commission committee? With the mission committee, we have defined commitments. I'm not going to go into the details, but this mission committee has to follow up, activate, help us meet our commitments. So we are moving forward progressively, gradually. There are a lot of things that are taking place. And what's also very interesting, because, well, there have been a lot of things about this type of enterprises. I prefer prefer to spend time with my cooking books, but sometimes you may be scared. And even if you have a very sound base, it's not always easy. So we have to put all the people at the service of the raison d'être. And so we have a sort of a test card to support the initiatives proposed by the various parties. So what do you believe our customers want? And how do you measure whether you are right or not? And how does it work? So, to conclude, I had noted that we do not have much to share because our company is still losing money, but we felt that we had to share our will. We are happy to do it, and we can also share our power to act, and that's what we mainly share. And in your case, the fear is that there is so much freedom internally that sometimes it's not easy to coordinate this and to spread the word. It's an initiative that leads to learning and sharing, so it's also a risk. Yes, to some extent. Well, the word freedom is maybe not the right word. We feel like doing something. Of course, we have all committed employees. And the transformation I see is that we have committed employees, but they are inspired. They are really energetic. They are engines. And we feel like testing things, serving, inventing, creating. And this may be a difficulty because we have lots of projects and we are an SME with 150 people or between 150 and 200 people. Well, I think that this is the right time to talk about this. I think that there are some obstacles, difficulties, things which are not successful. So what do you do? What do you do when you have been faced with an obstacle? What did you do when you were facing an obstacle? Well, I don't know whether it was an obstacle, but it was a mini crisis. That's when we try to change our mode of remuneration of salaries. There was really no policy about wages and salary. You were going to Imfusio saying, well, I would like to have this or that. They said it's possible or not. But there was no grid, there was no uniformity in the salaries, and so some people felt that it was unfair because they had asked for more, while the others had asked for less, and, well, that was it. And one of the founders' dream was to have what we have today, that is to say, choose your salary, the salary you want, without taking into account what the others have. But to get to that point, we have had some obstacles, the first being a sort of crash test, and it was crash because we were all together, and he said, all right, let us have groups of 3 and choose what you want. Think about what you would like to have as a salary, and after discussion, it has lasted about 30 minutes. And then we come together and we talk about the ideal salary. It was a sort of a game, and the reactions have been terrible because you had one who said, I want so much, and my neighbor was saying, well, I have to ask more. So, you know, it has become a real fight. One was sick. 3 of them didn't want to talk to one another because, you know, it has been awful, full of insults. So what could we do? Well, we have dealt with the conflicts. That was the first thing. The 3 people who didn't want to talk to another have resumed the dialogue, which is important in a team of 14 people. And we have tried to make up for the gaps in salaries on identical jobs. We have tried to minimize the feelings of unfairness, and we decided in common that we would all have the same salary. There were 2 layers of salaries, actually, because our remuneration system has led to shared governance. Some employees had one level of salary and the others another level of salaries. And we didn't want to keep living like that. So we have had a seminar with a specialist of money, a former Swiss banker who is a coach about the relationship with money. We have spent 2 days playing with money, studying our relationships with money, and see how we reacted. It was an exercise to better understand ourselves and the others, and understand why you have people who are, let us say, will accept better what the others are earning. So we have had these 2 days seminar, and then after the summer and the autumn, we were still with our communist salaries. And we, in January 3 years ago, we have had the new system, but we were based on 3 models. The model of a Brazilian company, Semco, which is multinational, led by Ricardo Semler. I don't know whether you have read the books by him, and another 2 enterprises, and it has worked because we've had time to digest the situation. But we have had a phase that has lasted a few months, and that was very complicated from a relationship point of view. So you want to be co-responsible, but when you get to practical things, it's not so easy. Well, we have been faced with the obstacle of participation. We had many volunteers, because, and it was a concern because 78% of the executives were taking part, and so there were 2 reasons for that. Among the executives, you had discussions about this is not for me. How about the hierarchy? You felt sometimes that you were not well considered, and then you have the managerial function. They say, I'm going to spend a whole session to change, and the manager will say, you have other things to do. So sometimes these problems were easier to solve. But we have had to correct all that. Now the situation is better, but it has been a real difficulty at the start because we had part of the staff that was quite passive. Same thing in the training. We had internal trainers in the North, and we realized that we had only executives. We didn't have people working on the grassroots. So it was quite difficult, and it was the first obstacle. Then the second obstacle was in the various fields of EDF. The nuclear part was participating less than the others. We have corrected that, saying that they had to take part also in the discussions because they were concerned too. Well, we still have these obstacles. They are not totally solved, but it's a participation in which you had various categories of age and, of course, the types of jobs. The youngest were quite reluctant. Those who didn't dare come. So we had a population that started at 33 years of age. The average age is 41. So it's not a company which has very high ages. But we have had waves of recruitment, then a lower number of recruitments as in any other company. So these are the difficulties we've been faced with. The last difficulty was, well, I was very much interested by what you said about the enterprise with a mission, because we are a company with a mission to some extent. There are some constraints, which are the indicators, surveillance, etc. But it's a real commitment. And if we want to go to the end of the process, to the raison d'être, we have to do something that is required, a real requirement. So I still have ground to cover. Now, I get to the following question now. Then you have the structure of the governance. You have the process in decision-making, the indicators, etc. If you change those structures, those processes, is it a prerequisite or is it a consequence? Is it a help? Is it an obstacle or a break? And I give the priority to Agnes. Well, actually, we have more difficulties. Well, we do not have a clash. We rather have difficulties, more connected with what you say. We are not small enough to solve the problems in one room, and we are not profitable, so we depend very much on our shareholder, and sometimes we have difficulties. We have to change very rapidly. We are in a field that has been built on a retailing business. We are retailers with a traditional shop, so we are convinced that our mission is to promote the advantages of the home cooking. We are sure that we have a future and that we have a major role to play in terms of ecology and environment. But we have to see how I can provide specific signs of profitability to the shareholders, and at the same time I invest to prepare the future. Because you have all the stakeholders, the suppliers. We have an agreement with the suppliers and manufacturers, but sometimes there are SMEs. They also have to transform themselves. So this structure of governance is not totally developed. We now have increased the sales. We have increased the desirability among our customers. But for more than 1 year, we have lots of signs that our customers like us. And then the measurement is important too. We shouldn't wait until we have the measurement to start an action, because well, it has to start with your conviction and what you feel like doing. But you need measurements to orient, to study the results. And in SMEs, the data-driven company requires a lot of resources. And in an SME, you don't have all these resources. Well, that was a prerequisite for us to have the employees participate in the discussions. For an employee to have the same right as a manager to express himself was very difficult to impose, and the employee wanted to have a more flexible governance, something more innovating. And it's quite funny because well, I feel that the business governance sometimes does not realize that the employees want to change their enterprise. It's rather the management that is refraining because of what they do and what they know the company does. So some employees say we should move forward and do things and try things. That's a very big difference with the United States. In France, the reaction to failures is very bad. Very often, and it's an obstacle which I've been faced with in my company, but this is also true in other companies. I've been with Veolia, I've been a managing director of Sofres. It's always the same thing. People don't dare because they don't dare change things because they fear failure. A number of employees propose things, we know that it will fail, but we explain why. But on the other hand, we have a lot to learn to move forward. They are motivated because they propose things, but at the same time, the company will move forward. So I think it's a game at which you can win. Well, among my customers, I see that I have middle-sized companies in Montreal, and very often, especially in those SMEs, you have the belief that the managers who believe that the employees will never dare. But once they have the possibility to express themselves, you see that they have something to say. And very often the managers then realize that their employees have their say. Well, I think that this is due to the fear to share power and accept that you will lose part of your territory to share it with the employees. These are hindrances which you are faced with when you are with customers. A leader very often say they will not be able to do that. I don't think they feel like it. Did you ask the question? Are you totally sure? And actually, quite clearly, that's because they fear starting something which will be open to others. So maybe there is a contradiction there, but that's also what will make the richness of the organization. Then I would like to come back to what you said about the obstacles. To me, there are two types of obstacles. It's true that in France, people don't like failures too much. They don't assume them. They don't want to see them. But I see two types of obstacles. Those which you have to take due note of, you will do better next time. And then other obstacles where you haven't given up because you felt that what was important to wait until the project was really carried out. Well, I think that is also part of it. It is by learning to get feedback and analyzing the failures and see what you could do. That's what will make it possible for you to go as far as possible with the teams, with the colleagues. So I have no boss. So when we start something, we do it together. We have one single level for all, but I think that then you can learn teachings, lessons from the mistakes and the failures, and then you can go further. Well, that's why I think that this type of method, transparency exchanges, etc., should develop, because the enterprises which were pioneers were the retailing companies like Decathlon, and they have drawn benefits. The more generalized the method will be the best. It will be to better understand change in the company, be it in management or in among the other employees. So I think that this type of functioning is key. We have to have a lot of examples for the others to apply it. We have the fail camp in North America. People only talk about their failures and how they solved them. And now I would like the audience to ask questions, and I would like also the opportunity for the panelists to ask themselves questions.
Oui, je me posais une question par rapport à la question du contrat de travail.
I wanted to ask a question about the employment contract, which is subordination, so reporting. So the employee renounces on some power. So did you change, or did you know structures who have changed the employment contract? So it's no subordination. I was also wondering about the report to money. I know a company who had so with reference to the report to money, an employee is considered money as an end in itself, couldn't enter into the capital. So did you have employees who so how did you manage to treat that? And then I stop here for our representative from EDF. We also have trade unions to discuss about that. So in terms of collective intelligence. I think the first question was for me, wasn't it? So the contract, I must tell you that I don't feel like a subordinate at all. What's interesting is that we had to question our lawyer to know whether we can modify your salary every 4 months. Does it have an impact? Do we need to change the employment contract every 4 months? So, no, we don't have to, but you sign a sheet that actually notes down the amount that is given. It should be the same as the 4 months before, or has changed. So you can officialize and formalize, and it's a kind of rider to the contract. Then concerning the report to money, we didn't find ourselves in that situation because from the start, we're in a company that is strongly animated by the values. We all join Imfusio for the philosophy, for the commitment we have, and the impact we want to have on society. So it filters the profiles. And we haven't had any case where someone said was uninterested by money. And maybe what I wanted to specify, because I started the story that didn't finish it, it's important for me to specify that today we are no longer in salaries that are all the same. No salary is exactly the same, and the high salary is not necessarily that of one of the partners. So we have managed, after 3 years, to go to the end of our requirement to be completely disruptive in terms of benefit and compensation. It was important for me to specify that. There was an anecdote that when we became a B Corp, for example, in 2015, and in the recertification, the question of B Corp says that is there less than a gap between the salary of the CEO and the salary? I probably don't, if I look at the hours I make, so we have no problems in terms of salary. I would like to talk about the employment contract. I'm no lawyer, so it's more of a personal opinion. I don't consider that the work contract is a subordination, so it's a contract we have between two people. We have rights and duties. I am struck by the fact that I have children probably of your age, and one of them came to me and said, they offered to me to be self-employed, so no retirement, no nothing, so with everything that entices. So I don't know whether this is the subject. I never felt a subordinate. I'm a wage earner. I'm also a general manager, but I started as a young student. But there is a reflection I have that I've shared with no one in the company yet, with none of the partners, shareholders, maybe later. We talked a lot, from observation of my students and the young people. I'm very intrigued by Uber. And I was wondering why Uber, as soon as they need money, they take their bikes and deliver in extremely dangerous conditions. So that's my opinion. I was wondering, so when I asked the question, I said, actually, we can work whenever we want. In a store, you could say, I have a number of people, give me your availability. It could be an evolution. Not a matter of work contract, employment contract, it's not how to adapt to the way you work. I have a whole reservoir of people, and each tell me when they're available, and I base it's based on that. It could be an evolution. I don't know whether it's an answer to you, but that's part of my reflection. I will not talk about benefit and compensation because the grid, they must have about 160 levels, I think. So honestly, in the Soviet Union, they didn't have that, so they didn't dare. No, what I meant is that I wanted to give you an answer on the trade unions. It's a central question you're asking, actually, because at the beginning, it was the question, won't they have the impression of being short-circuited, be excluded? So I met them in a two-part to explain to them what we needed to do. I invited them to take part, and they took part. There were two things. There was a vote on the that's EDF. Okay, so they all voted unanimously on the mission, which means that whatever the trade union, this means that they understood fully and adhered to that. There's only one thing they asked me to do, is that there was some like speeding up electric vehicles. And there's one thing on the trade unions had a request for that, and they said, well, you know, it's a bit of a problem because we take things that come from you while we've been proposing things exactly the same, and we've been taking forever and we didn't get an answer. So I totally included them. Well, okay, take on that subject. You can say to trade union members, the idea comes from you. I mean, the idea is that we transform, go in the right direction. We don't own the ideas, and I don't own what DF employees say. It is the reflection of what they say. Up to now, we've been working hand in hand with them. I committed to meeting them regularly to tell them where we stood, how we were making progress on each of the programs raised by the employees and operations that we opened, and it is not surprising, but they completely adhered to the approach, and they didn't counteract their actions. But it's also close to what they said, that there are some topics we don't go. We didn't go for the benefits and compensations, or on the organization, yes, but on, for example, the issue of benefits and compensation is not something that we dealt with. And actually, in the sessions we had, they were there to talk about the vision of the company. They really talked about that. So it is not something that was personal. So it's more like a positive relationship with the trade unions, constructive. Do we have another question from the public? I don't know who was first, so next. Good afternoon. I have a question for Ségolène. There are 15 people in your company. You may have 16 or 17 people. How do you include, how do you onboard a new person in your organization, which is far from the normal organization of the company? What is the process to recruit? It is something that is rather specific and support, I suppose, more for onboarding. Well, actually, the recruitment process is, we have, for example, we've recruited, we had some departures of people who were leaving to have a different life to what they did at Imfusio, choosing a different job and a different. So we had to recruit 2 people over the summer. And these 2 people follow the whole process of recruitment. It starts with an interview with 2 of us, and then it followed, if they pass that first interview, is an informal meeting either around a meal or a drink, because we like taking drinks, having drinks, we like cooking. And so it's more like to share in an informal way with the people, so the person can meet the team to see how we share, because it's very lively. And the third stage that we offer the applicant to come for a day, and during that day they can take part in a call with a customer, on a meeting on a topic that's important to us, or what is happening when the person is there in the company. And on this, there is an hour and a half devoted to just question answers on our process of recognition in consciousness, because we send the whole process to the applicant, to the applicant, so he can have questions and remove any doubt, anything that makes him curious on this aspect. And then once all this process that we require to have this, and determine in consciousness the salary, and then it's the same indication as we have, like the turnover, the salary bill, salaries of everyone, the cash flow, and so on. All the things that we also offer salary grids in our field, in our region, because it's important to be aware of the market and not be totally out of the market. So we give all this, and as for us, the applicant has the possibility to, he must meet 2 employees, Imfusio members of his or her choice, to share. It's not to validate the application, it's more to say that he cannot go alone, and if there are things that are complex for him or her, that he can remove those hurdles. So this is how it works. So I think that for the next ones it's going to be the same, because it's working well, so there's no reason why we should change. And what I was sharing by answering the first question, what is helping us is our commitment, obvious commitment that is displayed, that filters the kind of profile that we have when the applicants know where they're going, and they know we are a company with an atypical type of operations, and maybe this person is going to be slightly disturbed as a new Imfusio member. Thank you. We have a question there. Michel from African News. I have just one question that concerns Esther. We have the point of view of France, of what is happening. I wanted to know whether there is a true philosophical difference in terms of the company in Canada, especially, to take this example, and whether we have other examples around the world. This is a very wide-ranging question, and I know, of course, better Quebec than the whole of Canada, which is an immense territory with different experience. What I think is similar is the reflection on the collective intelligence, which is well developed. So I would like to say that we are about on the same level. I see all three avenues I was talking about in my introduction. Some people put principles of holacracy that start with small bits and all that, and we can see all three configurations. Very often, we experiment things. We're more into a pilot and test, try and error type, and don't necessarily put the concept around the thing. But we talk a lot about collective intelligence. So holacracy, liberated companies, not so much talked about. It doesn't mean that we don't try things, but so we're maybe less conceptual. So in the United States, the collective intelligence is more developed in participation, including it went quite far. It's actually the Google started is 20% of the time to employees to do what they wanted to do, to go and offer things. 20% of the time, and they came back not because it didn't work out, but at least they tried. So this is something that is more common. Just one thing I wanted to specify: in the conditions of collective intelligence, you have to be really supported by the CEO. You have to know that there is a specific interest of the CEO to do that. If the CEO doesn't support you, then you have to convince all the managers to let the teams go there, exchange, change the organization. So you really have the CEO on board, really committed to the operation, and very close to the person who's steering that. So that is really a constraint. Well, yes, because what I noticed and what I'm experiencing as an entrepreneur is that the mental load of the CEO and entrepreneur reduces when you give more power to the employees. When you are an entrepreneur, you have the feeling that you have to make all the decisions, that you have to have an answer to all the questions, and that how much is that? What is going to be your salary? Well, I don't know. I have to make that decision. And I personally experienced, and I saw it in the eyes of other people, suddenly this mental load, this relief, physical relief, say, I'm not going to be the only one to be responsible for deciding things on. I have no real interest or real knowledge or expertise. So this is quite patent. So you have to involve the CEO, but I think what comes out of it in the approach is extremely reassuring and gratifying. Ségolène, you wanted to add something? Well, I wanted to comment on this, on the issues of depending on the culture and countries, how this is perceived. We have been led to work with groups who have subsidiaries, international subsidiaries, so we are confronted to other cultures. And what I noticed as a difference is very often is the rapport to time, the time that you spend for the company to transform and give room to employees. And a return, and I had a feedback I had very often is that you can complement that or contradict me if it's the case, that the rapport to time in North America is more narrow than it is when we support people in France. We end up with company managers or accept the fact that it may take 1 to 3 years. When we supported Leroy Merlin, it lasted 4 years. And actually, in North America, my colleague who worked in Montreal was sometimes confronted with situations where you were expected KPIs coming very quickly. Only we are human beings, and it takes us time to change our habits. And therefore, the KPIs are showing after 6 months to 12 months, to be honest. So maybe that's one of the differences that we noticed. And then after that, it's more like differences in the way we appear in the collective intelligence. If you go to the UK, they are more straight to the point in dealing with issues. So therefore, we have collective intelligence, but it goes much further, much faster in France because you have less conversation, less going back and forth. And therefore, this is it is a crucial difference we've observed. Absolutely. Do you have questions one for one another? The panel members? No? You don't have to. You send so many things. I would like to add something, is that the collective intelligence we have in France, we're doing it in the UK, where there are 15,000, and in Italy. And upon request from the subsidiaries, which shows that there is an international attraction. I'm sensitive to your comment about the concept of time and straight to the point. I have a question to each of you. Ségolène, maybe, do you think that your system of recognition could be applied to any company, and therefore at EDF on topics that are bones of contention, like 160 levels of compensation, would you feel like you could change things? I'll let Ségolène answer for me. We're removing all the levels, what do you want me to say? No, honestly, I don't believe that we should have an off-the-shelf model. We've built it. We were inspired by many things. So if you go and see SEMCO, the Brazilian multinational I talked about, they have criteria that are much more specific with compared to what we've done. But they have this operational mode where they talk about it in teams, where this is a topic of conversation. It is not a coffee machine break room type of conversation. So I don't know whether another company can do exactly the same way, same thing as we do, but I truly believe that we can change our rapport to money, and it will come with all the topics that come on the transparency of salaries, where we find the gap between the top salary and the bottom salary. We begin to raise the question. When I hear some friends at dinners who tell me there was the pay increase last week, I couldn't distribute bonuses to everyone, so I told them not to talk about it. And I said, are you talking to, and you're talking to adults? So of course they're going to talk to each other. And of course you're going to create parallel conversations. So no, maybe it will not look like what we're doing in our company, but I believe it is desirable to go towards more transparency. And if not just not putting criteria like we do, at least putting criteria that are also criteria on attitude more than skills. We have some buffer companies who have their engineers, so they had an Excel sheet. I don't like Excel sheets myself, but the criteria they chose are interesting. And they really widened the criteria that we can traditionally see in our companies. And very humbly, the very first discussion to have is not that about money, but on how we're going to do it and what is the method we want to implement to have this discussion. What I would like to add is that we have a team from Société Générale who came to meet us, so we tell them how we do it, and they did it their own way with the budget that were allocated, which was given to the department. So they did differently. They did exactly the way we do it, but they did something different and new in a big company. But they took that liberty within their team. Well, I'm a bit. We like Excel sheets in our company, and so I've a bit of trouble answering you. The debate on the EDF benefit and compensation grid, which was made probably more than 20 years ago. It was done actually with the trade unions. They took part in the establishment of the grid. It has become so complicated. You can start in GF1. You don't have people actually sort of JF1 up to JF19. So, because within that you have what you call the compensation levels you have in each grade, and then once you have GF19, you can go CS, so higher management, then D3, so D2 that are managers, and then the D1 are just super managers. So there's just some levels of hierarchy. Thank you for the question, and yes, that was a great question. So the true question there is that, can we do it in collective intelligence? I don't know, but based on what Esther says, yes, on the criteria we can discuss it. On criteria should be more taken into account, modernized from what they were before. This is something we can do. We cannot set the grade say it's going to start that level and at that level, but we can determine what kind of criteria we can take into account. Then all the employees are followed up in the function, the grid, and overall, every year, starting in January, a major discussion on the salaries which are not high enough, which is only normal. But overall, it's not too bad. It's a company that is underpaying its employees. It doesn't have this reputation. For me, this grid is completely crazy, but this is off the record, of course. Nobody's listening. Yes, of course. We have... it's going to be a fight within EDF. On the contrary, I'll go along the same line as Philippe, as you may have understood. I also work for EDF. What is interesting, to come back to this theme, is that the colleagues did not come to these dialogues to talk about their salaries and compensation, but talking about benefits and compensation was no longer taboo, which is new. I've been in the company for, what, 20 years now, and it was something that was just out of the question because very structured, very organized, our company, and monitored by the trade unions. So these dialogues freed the speech on that. They said you have levels of compensation, and we do something about it. How do we discuss about that? That was completely new. That's what I experienced, at least. This is not surprising. We had a hand raised. Gentleman in beige, did you have your hand raised? So, here, we have a question here, and maybe we have time for 2 questions from the public. So one of your cousins have been working for RTE, which is a subsidiary, an independent subsidiary of EDF. So I can recognize what you said, but what I'm a bit bothered by is that we're talking about money, and what we did is that since we had a difficulty to work on this with the employees who are managers or not managers, we worked on recognition. So the power was given to employees to recognize among themselves with the soft skills determined. So we worked with a startup developed told the KIF, so COCO workers. Every employee can send a KIF to 3 colleagues, being argumented, not just saying thumbs up, but it was like, thanks to your involvement, I managed to get this, I managed to do this and that, and completely transparent, which is something new in our company. We have the same culture. Another part of the company did that with secret thumbs up, so we don't know who sends it, but you get them. So I think it's a shame. Okay, there is money. Okay, we have a social barometer. It's not money that came first, and not even as a third level in what employees recognize or not. It was the peer review. So we empower the employees to recognize us. I say it's not. I'm not saying it is a success, but we have a convincing It's rather convincing. We have a comment or a question. We talked a lot about money, but I have the feeling that we talked about the money as an example of a discussion that was fundamental and underlined that it wasn't the only motivation, because after a while, you call that the recognition. Yeah, exactly that, yes. So I think it's important that we specify that. It's not an EDF, apparently. It was not the priority topic. Now, of course, we did talk about it to talk about a counterexample. Good evening. I'm Rodolphe from Rabot du Tilleul. And I wanted to congratulate you because the best conference I've ever seen at the World Forum. I'm wondering why you're not in a plenary session tomorrow and not speaking to a half-empty or half-full theater. But the other one was totally full, and your theme was much more interesting than what was said yesterday in the morning. That was to start with. Anyway, I have my question now. Do we give the power to employees, or do they take over? What happened in your three examples? I would say both. I would say both. Employees who take power without being given it is hackers, is actually the corporate hackers at one point. If they have no mandate, if they're not recognized, these leave, these people leave. So after a while, it can only be both. So employees take power if we open the scope, if there's a mandate to do it, and if we feel that they have more freedom in the framework given. So after having said that, the challenge is to have companies understand that more than giving us sharing the power, it's not losing power. I like an expression that we have in the book, a great book called Power and Love from Adam Kahn. I invite you to read it because it's really, it does you a lot of good. It talks about the difference between the power on or the power over and the power with. So this is what we are tending towards, leaving this posture of managers of that power on the team, and it no longer works, and it is a hope that it will not work anymore. And what's interesting is that when you have power with the others, this is where we have the beginning of governance, shared governance, so both. I'm going to let you answer, and maybe you'll be able to give, we have 2 minutes left. It's for the future. What is the future? What are the next steps to go into that direction? Maybe you have the answer, also be able to answer the question of our public member. We are a specific company, as my colleague from RTE said. It's more risk because the employees will get out of breath and not leave because we are sort of a specific status. So you have to dare take the power, and therefore this is why it's both. I totally agree with you. Also, we dare to take the power and tell us that what we have to change in this company, because actually you're right. The question is actually a good question. Very often we have employees, I'm sure you must know that, some employees don't dare say how much weight we've got. So it is about telling them that you have weight, you have power, so go for it. So to talk about the future is fine, thank you. We are launching a number of operations, specific operations for the nuclear power, which was less people, but there were specific operations on the business line, on the jobs. We have some things in the United Kingdom. So I think that the future is made up of the dissemination of the collective work. So within 5 years, I had 50,000 employees from the company, and I wish that RTE could take part as well as Enedis. Unfortunately, the Regulation Commission forbids us to work. Thank God we have conferences like this one where we can have an exchange.
Agnès?
Agnès? Well, in 2 minutes it's going to be difficult, but 2 seconds. I would like to go forward with the shareholder. I don't want to speak on his behalf or seem to be a missionary from a company started from the family, the Mullier family shareholding, and they've worked a lot in the sharing of power, having and willing. So there's everything they've implemented with the profit-sharing contracts and then the shareholding of but it doesn't work as it used to work before. Well, first because the profit sharing now is taxed, so a lot of people don't keep this money as shares. They have sold their shares in there. And it's not because you have a shareholder, an employee, that it gives power of decision. We're not in the board of directors, you're not there. And they realize that, and since these are people who have been a driving force, they challenge us as CEOs to see how do we reinvent the policy of sharing. And I find this very interesting. I don't know, it is part of one of the components. I'm very interested in what you said, and I would like to be part of that, and therefore it talks about recognition, it talks about many other things, and I found this very interesting. Ségolène, a word of conclusion, and to remind you that you have to concretize your commitment. Maybe you should show that as illustrating the future of your commitment. Well, on our internal model, we're going to continue as we've started it, and as we are, changing each other, and have the capacity to include newcomers who feel comfortable in this atypical model. What I think it animates us and makes it that we will continue doing that is what we do with our customers, with our clients. We're spreading the way we see the evolution of organizations with a positive vision of things, and above all, when we talk about the recession or the ecological crisis, we tend to look only at the environmental impacts we may have. Can we change what we can change in our daily lives and do differently? So change that. What really is important for me is to cultivate our know-how, working with people, and very often this is something that we overlook in the opportunity in the crisis, is to engage more the employees in the collective adventure and the adventure of the companies. So this is why things change, and that we look at the company you're in and the ecosystem we live in. This is what makes a change is going to impact and take part in what we can do differently to meet this crisis that we all hit by. So opportunity in crisis. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all. We are now out of time. We're going to stay a few minutes. So if you want to talk to us, we'll be here on stage. You're all invited to Montreal, where we had the biggest climate march of the whole world, with Greta at the forefront.
À bientôt.
See you soon.